Hello, welcome to another video. Yes, you thought the All Code Sucks series was dead, but we're back with another one, and we're trying for even more ridiculous bedhead than last week. But we're talking about Bazel today, or Bazel, or I don't really know how you're supposed to pronounce it. It's a build system that's often used in monorepos. I sort of hate it, but I am going to show you an example today where I almost feel like I should just rename this series to My Tests Weren't Running, because I feel like half the episodes are different ways that your tests don't actually test what they're testing. But today we're going to be talking about Bazel. I have a very minimal setup of a rules Python Bazel setup. I'm going to walk you through all the files and then show you the problem and then show you a couple of solutions, because there's like 6 different ways to solve it in Bazel. If you want a high level of Bazel, it's basically a build system that that you need to re-represent your world in Bazel land, and then it will provide you build and test and runnable targets. The main idea behind it is it forces you to enumerate all of your dependencies, and so it can know if a file changes what things need to be rebuilt and what things don't need to be rebuilt. But it also requires you to basically annotate the world. Anyway, let me just show you the setup that I have here, and then I guess we'll start with the Python files since they are the simplest, and then we'll show the Bazel setup. Oh, and I guess I can show the requirements file as well. Build.bazel, there we go. Okay, so requirements file, I've just added 2 dependencies. This is the one that I'm just going to be using in the library that we write, and this is what we're going to be using to run tests. This is my extremely simple library. It literally, I mean, it's basically just a re-export of this function, but it is something that does something so that we can test a behavior. And this is a test. All the test does is imports the library and then calls the function, and it should succeed. It shouldn't raise anything, so this test should just pass. So very straightforward Python code, nothing really complicated there. Next we have the Bazel setup. I'm using rules Python, which is the I was gonna say the recommended use Python module for Bazel. That's debated a little bit, but anyway, this used to be part of Bazel, so that's why we're using it today. We've configured Python 3.12, and we've told it to parse our requirements out of requirements.txt. We've also frozen the requirements into this file. So this is kind of like the minimal setup you need to have a Python toolchain and dependencies. Next is our actual build file. Typically use build files in Bazel to annotate your library's executables and tests. And so in this case, you import all of the things that you need. This is just a convenience so that I can recompile the requirements really easily. This is a library, that library that I told you about before. You give it a name, you tell it what sources you have, you can have dependencies, all those sorts of things. And then we wrote a test. So the test here is PyTest. It also has a name so that you can test it using the command line. You specify the sources and you specify the dependencies. All fine and dandy. With Bazel, you can run Bazel build. It has this weird syntax. This triple dot means everything under this, and / is the root of your workspace. So this will build everything. I've already built it before, so you can see here that it actually didn't build anything at all, because all 5 targets were already built. You can use Bazel query to list all of your targets. Oops, again, I need the triple dot there, and so like these are all of the things that are present there, and you can run Bazel test to test everything. Oh my goodness, every time I miss that 3rd dot. And you can see here that it ran 2 tests. It ran the mylib test and it ran the requirements test, or so it appears that we ran the mylib test. I can actually prove to you that the test did not run, even though it looks like I have set it up properly and it looks to Bazel like it passed. There's several things missing from this that cause it to not actually run at all. So let's start by breaking the test intentionally. Let's just do we'll just raise ass, I guess. Hi. So this test should always fail, of course, because we've just raised an assertion error here. We're using PyTest, so clearly PyTest should run on this and it should crash. And when we run Bazel test on it, of course, it does not crash. Note here, we've also got a cache test. We didn't change the requirements file, so it didn't need to rerun this test. And oddly enough, it reports the duration from the first run, which I think is kind of neat, but that's off topic. Mylib test passed, and it passed in 1 second, or 0.1 second. And so what the heck is going on here? Well, if we run just that test, mylib test, and is it test underscore output equals streamed? I think so. Yeah. And then we have to do, shoot, what is the run multiple test? Because it's cached, so we're not going to see any output. Bazel run test multiple times. This is also really annoying. Okay, runs per test equals 2. Interesting, we saw no output. And that's because it ran our module. And our module doesn't do anything by default. There's no if name equals main here. And so you might think, okay, I'll add if name equals main. Oh, we need pytest, import pytest, pytest.main. And now, surely if we run our test, it will, it'll run pytest now, right? Surely? Oh, it did! Look, we got pytest output. But again, again, if you didn't have this failing test, let's just comment this out for a sec. Didn't have this failing test, you would see this output and you'd be like, wait, what the heck? Mylib has no check string. What did I call it? Require stir. Okay, damn it. If you didn't have, okay. Anyway, if you didn't have a failing test, you'd be like, oh yeah, it's running pytest. Everything's great and fine and dandy. No problems here. This test is definitely working. I can commit this, send a pull request, and move on with my life. However, you'll notice that when I had this broken test here, and we ran this, we see the failure messages in the output. But Bazel's like, yeah, man, that's fine. The test passed. There were no problems there. No problems at all. Everything passed, despite this. And that's because yet another bug here. Pytest.main just returns the exit code. It doesn't actually exit. So you need to have raise system exit here. And then finally you have a test that's actually validating your behavior. But you'll notice that there were like 2 big major pitfalls there that probably should have been avoidable. One was, you know, I need this if name equals main, and this is really ugly. I don't like, part of the point of pytest is you don't have to add all this like stupid sugar all over your code. It just does what you need it to. So adding this is really annoying. Then needing to remember that you need this is really annoying. And like putting this block in every file is really annoying. And at a previous company I worked at, Stripe, we actually had a linter that made sure you added this to every file. But I think there's actually 3 better solutions, maybe 2 better solutions. I think one of them didn't exist at the time, so we'll give Stripe a pass there. But one better solution is to instead make a macro for pytest instead of using the built-in Bazel one. I actually don't remember the syntax for macros. I think it's something like this. I don't know. And then you do sources, name sources, etc. And then you would call pytest yourself and have a different main, and then, you know, provide a little pytest main.py. This is the pattern that I've seen in most things where like they actually define a main that imports pytest, and then you know, raise system exit pytest.main sys.argv1 : something like this. This isn't precisely, but the point here is to have a specific entry point that you use with all of your tests, and then you can, this also makes it so you can modify the pytest arguments and do whatever you need to do here. Why did I raise system exit twice? I can just return here. Yeah. This also allows you to like change whatever arguments you're passing to pytest. Maybe you need JUnit XML and everything. So you can basically have a single entry point for pytest and then never use the Bazel or the rules Python _test thing. You would always use your special macro. You know, imagine I've made that here in pytest test. and this itself calls pi_test, but with the proper arguments. And then you would do this. You would probably also include your dep for pi_test directly in that, so you wouldn't need to duplicate it. You know, you'd have some nicer things here. And yeah, the syntax for Bazel is really strange. It's a language called Skylark. Skylark language. Yeah, Starlark. Okay, it's like Skylark doesn't sound right. Starlark, which is sort of a dialect of Python, but they choose some really strange, some strange syntax choices or like spacing choices. Like in Python, you would not put spaces around this, but in Starlark, not Skylark. Wait, it used to be called Skylark. Am I tripping? Yeah, it used to be known as Skylark. Okay, I was pretty sure that's what it was called. What the heck? Man, that makes me feel old. When was Skylark a thing? Anyway, it's a Python variant, but it has some weird quirks to it that I won't go into. But like, it doesn't support all the syntax of Python, and like some of the things work slightly different. And the actual execution engine for this, I believe, is written in Go. Maybe it's Java. I don't know. But anyway, I'm off topic. You would write your own pi_test macro, replace all of your pi_tests with this, and maybe write a linter to prevent that. That's one option. I think the better option, or at least the more modern option, is to avoid the rules Python pi_test entirely and use this other thing called rules pi. I know, really confusing. Rules Python, rules pi. Why are they named the same? You know. More compatible Bazel rules. More compatible than what? But rules pi has some improvements over what they call the legacy rules Python, including better dependency management and better user-facing rules. These things: pi_test, pi_library, etc. Maybe not the compiled pip. I don't know. But for instance, if we look at, I already have the docs open for it. If we look at the pi_test target here, man, that text is gonna be tiny on YouTube. Let's see if we can get that bigger. pi_test, please go there. Yes. So their pi_test actually provides a separate main entry point. So by default, this is how pi_test uses the main. Like, it uses that source file that we used as main. And that's why we had the weird behavior. But they have this pi_test main, which allows you to configure a main file similar to that one that I was showing you before. Why does this not click through? No, why you have dead link? But anyway, it lets you set a pi_test main, and then you avoid this entire problem. Like, it's weird how specific this is built for pi_test, but I guess pi_test is kind of the ubiquitous test runner in Python, so makes sense to me. But this allows you to just completely avoid this entire problem and just use a nice thing instead. Anyway, this has been another episode of Your Tests Aren't Actually Running. Hopefully you found this useful, and I will see you in the next one.